Hi, and welcome to Bululu Wellness, your guide to well-being. Here, we simplify health with practical and easy-to-use tools to help you live a healthier life. Welcome, everybody, to Bululu Wellness, where we rebuild energy from the root, one episode at a time. And I am so incredibly honored to have Jill Miller today with me because her work actually has shaped me a lot in the world of the fascia, somatic healing, and breath in ways that I never thought or understood. So I'm sitting down with you, Jill, today, which is an educator, an author, a creator of Yoga Tune-Up, a role model, Treat While You Train, and most recently, your groundbreaking book, Body by Breath and Certification. And you have helped me so much understand the fascia and how it's just not a tissue and how it is really an emotional sensory and is completely intelligent. So I am so honored to start this conversation with you today.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to reconnect with you and for you to have also had so many different inroads into my work. It's really interesting to connect with you, especially about the work I did at 24 Hour Fitness, which was this Treat While You Train program. And I think you were sharing before we went on that, you were having experiences that just shocked you in your body that were brought about by this self-myofascial release tool opening up doorways for you.
Yeah, so because of that, and because you have impacted my life since 2014, and you probably didn't even know that, right? You've been impacting people's lives since probably way before. Can you tell somebody that have never heard about you, who are you and what you do?
My name is Jill Miller, as you already shared, and I am known for a couple of different things. I'm known for being a big disruptor in the yoga space. The first program that I brought into the world was Yoga Tune-Up, and Yoga Tune-Up was a way that I needed to teach to try to dispel myths that I saw happening in the yoga space, but also to help people live better in their body by including more anatomy and more joint specificity into their body's repertoire so that they could accomplish the yoga poses that they wanted to do. I saw that traditional yoga poses were really not a great fit for a lot of people's bodies. And then people felt bad about themselves because they did yoga bad, quote unquote. And of course, they weren't doing yoga bad. They just weren't having poses or movements that were customized to them so that they could awaken the body parts that are needed for a pose or what have you. But what happened along the way is some of my massage background would come into the classroom, and I could see that the reason people were bypassing body parts or not really getting a sense of where they were in space was something that was actually fixable through massage. But I can't run around the classroom and massage all the people in the classroom. And so I started to bring balls into the classroom. And I would teach people how to roll these different parts of their body to create a little bit of gentle friction, which awaken what we call proprioception, body sense, and also interoception, physiological sensing, so that their body parts were more participatory. And then they could actually do the yoga or do the move better. And what happened was that rolling was ending up taking away people's pain. It was like this rubber ball solution to so many things. And I realized I had to brand that away from the Yoga Tune-Up. And so I created something called the Role Model Method. And my first book was called The Role Model because that just took off. And that took off into so many different populations. It wasn't just the yoga space. It was the clinical space. It was the CrossFit space. It was the massage therapy space, and on and on and on. But what happened in all of that, I'm telling you my whole history now, but it's a shorter history.
I love this.
But what started happening in all of that, and I think that's something that would happen to you, is that people were not just rolling and improving their range of motion. When they were rolling, they also started to have a range of emotion, and their inner life started to show up for them. Their emotions, intimacy, self-intimacy revealed itself in ways that they were shocked by, how could these little balls end up revealing all of this other types of pain, right? Emotional pain that I have subdued inside of myself. And so I wanted to explore that because I knew that that was true for me. My own journey for self massage began from a very emotional, wounded place. And so I wanted to write a book about that. And so I wrote my second book called Body by Breath, which really investigates the more subtle sides of this work. And and so that's a little bit who I am. And I own a business called Tune Up Fitness Worldwide, and I train educators, clinicians, and everyday people into these methods so that they can be their own first line self-care healthcare provider.
I love that because whenever you're answering this question, I know just because I've read your books and I also follow you a lot on social media, you have a deeper sense of why you started this type of work. And is there something that you can share that really drove you to maybe even the world of massage? I did not know about the massage part, but is there a little bit of like that history of yours that you can share with us? And also how for you really had that aha moment, also this balls that is already touching our fascia, and then tell us a little bit more about that because I'm interested.
Yes, sure. I'm very comfortable talking about all of that. And yes, I do write about a lot of that history in my books. So, sort of the genesis of all of this need for self care and using these tools for my own regulation, even using yoga for my own regulation, is from a very fractured childhood. My parents have each been married 3 times. There are lots of divorces, lots of upheavals, lots of moving across state lines, loss of childhood friends, loss of school, loss of property. There was a lot of upheaval in my childhood, and I love my parents, and wow, I'm a parent now. I know how difficult it must have been to go through what they went through. But I was a kid, and so I absorbed a lot of the stresses of this and processed them in my own way. And the way I managed the stress was I tried to control my body with food and exercise. I was a heavy kid. I was overweight by any measure, by every imaginable measure, and I wasn't very healthy. I was very sedentary. I was very bookish. I loved to read. I liked to play with my dogs and my dolls, but that was about it. And when I was a tween and a very early teenager, I started to stop eating. I knew I was overweight and I started to starve myself. And this happened at the same time that my mother had brought home the Jane Fonda workout and the Raquel Welch yoga video. So I started to do these fitness videos with my mom. And this was in the early 80s. And like the Jane Fonda workout had just exploded, and Olivia Newton-John is singing Let's Get Physical. And this aerobics culture was emerging in a major way. And I got caught up in all of that, but I also got caught up in the pursuit of thinness at all costs. And so I ended up losing all of that quote unquote baby fat, but I became skeletal, and I was 65 pounds and 4'10", having been 95 pounds just months before. So I didn't do it healthily, and I did it kind of secretively, and I hid my body in big baggy clothes, which was the look in the 80s. So people didn't really notice it, what I was going through. And then somehow I managed to start eating again, but I never healed my eating disorder, and then it ended up transmuting into an even more pernicious problem, which is binging and purging. So I became I used to vomit, and that was a massive practice for me, a religious practice. And so as a bulimic, I was also looking for ways to heal. I knew what I was doing was damaging. I was reading books on anorexia and bulimia. I was checking out books from the library. In high school, my mother never saw these. I don't know how she never saw these books, but I was just trying to hack my own problems without actually talking to a counselor or talking to my mother, which, well, maybe that would have helped. But trying to make the story a little bit shorter, once I got into college and I got into a great school, I ended up going to yoga classes and doing work study at a shiatsu massage school outside of school and learning the Japanese art of shiatsu. And then I was doing work study at a yoga studio. I was doing all this stuff. But the therapy ball work, especially the gut-based work, came from a suggestion that a yoga teacher made to me. So I let this teacher know that I couldn't feel my abs, which I thought was a problem because I was in the dance department and I was doing Pilates and I couldn't feel my abs. I couldn't feel them contract. And I also told her that I was bulimic. And I knew these things were connected. I knew that my lack of feeling my body had to do with these behaviors. And she suggested that I lay belly down on this object, which looked like a hamburger bun. It was a sandbag that was the shape of a hamburger bun, and to lay my belly down on it and to breathe into it. And so I did, and it was just horrible. It was like horrible pain in my abdomen that just pervaded, took over my whole body. It was very unpleasant, but I felt, and that was the key. I wasn't numb anymore. There was that visceral pain finally like made its way up to my brain, and my brain said, I can hold you. I can hold this. I can hold this pain. I can feel this pain. That was profound. And so I started to practice that in my dorm room. I would roll up a towel and I would spin it around and make it look like a honey bun, like a cinnamon bun. And I would breathe into this towel all over my abdomen every single morning, first thing, after going to the bathroom, to try to reconnect to the parts of me that I was afraid of, that I lived in fear of, that I disavowed, that I hated so much, and just tried to befriend myself. And that was the beginning of that journey. And now, of course, I have many, many tools, especially the Gorgeous Ball that we use for visceral massage. We use it for lung massage and for very, very gentle way. It would never put a sandbag in somebody's abdomen and say, breathe, best, hope for the best. So that is really the journey of how I worked my way out of the bulimic behaviors and into an agreement with myself to try to support all of the parts of me, the parts that I liked, the parts that I didn't like, but to bring them all together again and to re-embody my body.
That is so beautiful, and thank you so much for sharing that story. Also, I learned today that we both were fans of Jane Fonda, but I, I,
Also a bulimic. So she's actually one of the people that I learned about binging and purging from.
oh,
She literally talked about it on 2020. This was a news show that people watched in the like 70s and 80s. And they did an expose on her, and she was very open about it. And that's actually kind of where I got the idea to throw up.
really? Wow. I didn't, I was,
Yeah.
I was younger at the time, so to me it was just more movement. But then my dad did
Hmm.
pass when I was 11. So my system, my entire body shut down. And it's not that I wanted to be in any disorder eating or anything like that, but I remember just eating watercress every day because I wasn't hungry and I had gastritis and all these things. So putting that courageous ball on top of my belly or vice versa, me on top of the courageous ball was very interesting. Let me tell you, I almost cried. It made me feel
Hmm.
nauseous. And that's when I
Hmm.
teach it to people, I'm like, please safely and slowly because it can spark so many things there. And with that being said, you teach beautifully about the fascia and how it's sensorial and emotional and informational. You are one of my biggest inspirations to understand better the fascia because as a fitness instructor, I did not know what the fascia was until I went to that training at 24 Hour Fitness, and you changed my world. You did. And so for the listeners, can you explain a little bit about what the fascia is?
Sure. Yeah. So this is such a complex body part. And so reducing it into simplifications is challenging. But the simplest way that I like to explain this whole body connective tissue is that it is your seam system. It is your body's living seam system. It is the stitches that connect you from foot to face, cell to skin, heart to brain meninges, and everything in between. So it is the fibrous and fluid connective tissue that you see if you've ever taken chicken apart or even cuts of beef or meat, you see this sort of white, stringy, translucent stuff between individual chunks of meat. This is that tissue. You have it all over your body. And it is an incredibly dynamic tissue. It provides your body with your form and your shape. It is also very fluid rich. It's 11.5 liters of fluid are housed within your fascial tissues, but it also is very sensory rich. And this is something you've referred to many times. There's 250 million sensory nerve endings that that end in your fascial tissue. So it's a huge organ of sensing, and it helps to provide feedback about where we are in space, physically. It also helps with sort of the capillary beds and our microcirculation. It is such a complex and involved tissue that it's also proposed to be reclassified as its own organ system. And so we can get as complicated as you want, or we can make it really simple and just talk about how it just connects us to all the parts of us all the time. And you're never not training it. You're never not touching it. You're never not involving it. It's just we didn't really know how to discuss the dark matter of the body.
And with that, there's a lot of emerging research right now on trauma, right? And trauma being stored in the body. The body keeps the score. Now I'm in a training with Dr. Amy in regards to the biology of trauma, which I love. The trauma that I want to talk about, especially in the connective tissue. And from your experience, how fascia holds or reflects that emotional history for a person with trauma?
Well, this is not a really, simple question because we have to understand a little bit more about the autonomic nervous system, and also, the sympathetic versus parasympathetic branches, and how, people who have experienced a lot of trauma may be a little more tightly wound, a little more agitated, more highly anxious in their bodies in general. And that spinning, that overdrive of the sympathetic nervous system can create a lot of chronic tension in your fascial tissues throughout your body, just because of the abundance of sort of shock to the system. There's an interplay with the cells that compose your fascia. So the cells that compose your fascia are called fibroblasts, and they tend and mend to all of the fibers that are in their area. Your fascial tissues are going to be going along with the postural compensations that are generated by your nervous system. So if, for example, you tend to live in fear, you will likely have some muscle guarding in certain parts of your body. And I would venture to say there may be clenching in the jaw quite frequently, tension in the forehead, the frontalis muscles, a little bit of rounding in the shoulders, just like, you've got your dukes up, and even tension in the hip flexors and the psoas, because you're ready to run. And so your fascial tissues are going to accommodate your postural proclivities. And so that might render these places with thickened connective tissue. And so when we start to roll that area or start to stretch or create turbulence in the connective tissues in these different areas where we have our postural habits of defense up, it can be euphoric to release these areas, right? Because it will diminish pain, it'll improve range of motion. And then we can have the associated emotion that goes along with the release of these things. There is a more complex, involved thing that goes along with adrenaline spikes can start to thicken the connective tissue, and what happens with the fibroblasts in those instances. But it is not an immediate thing. These are sort of long-term changes that happen within the cell bodies of the connective tissue due to exposure to traumatic events. And Dr. Stephen Porges, who is one of the researchers that I highlight in Body by Breath, he talks a little bit about the autonomic nervous system involvement via the nerve endings that are, implanted throughout the fascial tissues. But I think the simplest way to look at it, because I just went into a lot of complexity, is we are so used to our resting tone. Our resting tone is what our brain thinks we need to cope on a day-to-day basis, which is how we face the world. And when we start to induce the relaxation response, and we can do that in many different ways. I like to induce it through breathing, through position, through rolling, and through stimulating very specific portals that sort of get at the vagus nerve. When we start to enter into this relaxation response and we unclench the areas that our resting tone has habituated us to, we can start to feel very unmoored and discombobulated in recognizing how defended we've been, how much unnecessary energy we've expended to hold ourselves in a certain way that's completely unnecessary and is actually very imbalanced in the way that we face life. I think that those adaptations, though, are necessary until you're ready to, until you're able to process how it is you've adopted. So, like for your example, with a parent passing at a young age, I mean, this is such a brain changing incident that has a ripple effect. I mean, ripple isn't even the right word. It's a cataclysmic effect on every system of your body and how you see the world. And so, of course, this is going to affect our physical body. These are not, we're not separate from our experiences, but how we story them and how we kind of survive them and cope with them, that can change over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at 11, you are now needing to push in life and just survive in a way, right? And just tense as much as possible and contract. And whenever, as an adult, I learned how to create that sensorial awareness of my body, that also came a little bit with anxiety, because once my body starts understanding this parasympathetic states and relaxation, it just comes all this emotion and forward, So this is why I think your work is so important, because I do believe that the more I do it, the more I can get more in tune with my physical body and really find safety again. So for the person that is constantly on that push or performing or training, an athlete training, or simply living in sympathetic, like our professionals, corporate people, how do you see fascial and breath work helping them find safety again?
So these are portals into your relaxation response. So we can use, pressure, we can use shear, we can use the position, all gently to tranquilize that the rat in the cage, right? So it's like giving you a conscious sedative. So this is not just like knock you out and like put you to bed, but you very, very slowly destivify, disarm those patterns. And in the book, in Body by Breath, and in the training that you took, I talk about the 5 Ps of the parasympathetic nervous system. And the 5 Ps is a really, I think, simple model that anybody, whether, I presented the folks at Amazon and Johnson & Johnson, it's something that corporate people and all people can really pick up on. And the first P is perspective. You've got to be willing to acknowledge that you're doing this work and that you want to be a gracious host for it. If you are resisting it, even from your mindset, it's going to be very difficult to induce a really tranquil state in your body. So examples of perspectives, of these mindset sayings that we do in Body by Breath work, for example, my breath is home. One that I work with, all of me is welcome here. Right. And that helps me to see like the parts of me that like I don't like or think are irrelevant. Like, no, everything is hosted. All of it is welcome. And then the second P is place. It's important that when you're trying to do parasympathetic dominant style work, that you're in a place where you are safe, where you can let go. So whether that's a room with four walls, whether that's a yoga studio, or whether that's in your bedroom, under the sheets, wherever you feel safe. So place. The third P is position. In order to induce the relaxation response, it's helpful to go with gravity, to be low to the ground. In fact, to be laying flat or even slightly at an angle, what I call this gentle slope, where your pelvis is just a little bit higher than your heart, which is higher than your head. So that could be just as simple as laying on the ground and then lifting your bottom and placing it on a pillow or a Coregeous ball or a yoga block. And that induces something called the baroreceptor reflex, which the short version of that is that it slows down your heart rate and it slows down your breath pace. And so these are all ways of slowing down, getting low, staying with your mindset, whatever you've chosen. And then the fourth P is pace of breath. So we can use slow breathing, slow paced breathing to kind of get out of the rut of our habit of breathing fast or breathing shallow, but we're going to do slow, deep breathing to support the relaxation response. And that also really helps the vagus nerve as well. And then the fifth P is palpation. And that fifth P is the strategic placement of therapy balls, and then the rolling and the friction with the therapy balls, because they physically can change the sympathetic tone of the entire body with just correct rolling. And so we use the Coregeous ball, the yoga tune-up balls, the plus balls, the alpha balls in a myriad of ways to support that. And then the bonus with the palpation is that they can address areas of pain or stuckness or discomfort. And then we have all these other like wins, such as I don't have pain anymore, I'm moving better, so all these other wins that the therapy balls create. And so those 5 Ps are the parasympathetic pill, the parasympathetic package that help you to uptick the relaxation response and then to just take off the cloak of this leaden sympathetic stress that runs rampant, and that will come back. It's going to come back, but at least we have a way that we can meet it and improve our nervous system's resilience. So we're not always stuck in overdrive, but we have more capacity over on the other side of our nervous system's wellness.
And that's what I love the most is when a person tells me about stress or what is resilience is about really building that capacity. Our bodies can handle stress, but it's how do we build that capacity, even physiologically in this regards. Jill, fascia is always misunderstood or really reduced to just rolling with a ball. If you're in the fitness world,
I'm glad it's rolling with the ball, because most people don't even roll with the ball. They're like, oh, they roll on the foam roller. I'm like, no, what?
Or the foam roller, but they also have a very hard ball. So what is the most important what's the most important truth about this for people that they should know about this type of work, rolling with a ball or rolling with a foam roller?
Okay, soft is supreme. It doesn't have to hurt to work. You don't need a tool that feels like it is filleting you in a painful way in order to get a result. Less can be way more. The soft tools really conform to your body, and they don't keep pushing in and injuring you. So we do risk bruising. We do risk joint dislocations if we're just hammering ourselves really hard with things like lacrosse balls or PVC pipe. It's better for the nervous system, first of all, like to meet your nervous system so that it doesn't send the alarm system. So when you're rolling on a tool that's too hard, it's going to hurt. And what you're rolling against is, number one, your pain, but you're also rolling against your own muscle bracing response. So you're not going to be able to get deep or get a therapeutic response if your sympathetic nervous system is the thing that's being engaged while you're rolling. So in order to engage our parasympathetic nervous system while we're rolling, we need to have something that feels yummy, that conforms to our form, that can navigate in and around bony prominences without irritating or agitating. And so the therapy balls that I produce they're springy, they're grippy, they're compressible rubber that really molds to you. And they're all over the floor always. But this is the largest, the alpha ball. So all of them are made with grippy, pliable rubber. And then the Coregeous ball, where is that? That's an air-filled ball. And this is great for the trunk, for the neck, for your abdomen, your viscera, for breathing. You can literally feel your body breathing into it. You can feel the reciprocalness of the tool working on your core cavity while you're expressing your breath into it. It's really quite beautiful. So the biggest myth is pain and gain. That's not true when it comes to self-myofascial release. It doesn't have to hurt to work, and less can be way more.
And how do you see the fascial care as be part of like this integrative health model that I have in my head? Because I have it in my head, but I want to ask it to you to see how can you make people aware that how important it is, like fascial care, including with nutrition, movement, breath work, even emotional regulation. Where do you see that fascial work to be part of that integrative health model that Meli has in her head?
There's a lot that we can do to take care of ourselves that we don't need to outsource to others. I love getting a massage when I click with the therapist. right? When I feel that their nervous system is a good host for my nervous system. But if there's a mismatch, it's hard to let go. It's hard to let your guard down and really get the therapy that you need. But you are so unique. You kind of know exactly the amount of pressure that you can tolerate. You know exactly the spot. And when people can have that autonomy to address their own physical needs, and I mean that in both spellings of the word need, address their own physical needs, it's very empowering to realize, oh, I healed myself. I got myself into this mess, and I can actually work my way out and I can learn something about myself in that process. So I think that's very, very empowering. And I don't mean that all pain is self-generated. And like some we have accidents where in a car crash where we fell down the stairs or what have you. But if we've been overtraining, which a lot of the people I work with are in the fitness industry and they've just overtrained themselves, but they've been working around issues that maybe came from childhood, from a fallen childhood, and they've just just trying to blast through and hope for the best. And that's really not the best strategy. We really want to have all of our tissues brush and floss, just like we would brush and floss our teeth. No joint should be left alone. There's so much that we can do for every fascial layer and every continuity in the body. And I think that the more people can learn about how they can treat themselves, the better off they'll be. And then you'll be able to have conversations with your primary care doctors or surgeons or whoever it is. You'll be more informed about your form when you're in conversations with them. And I spend a lot of time working with educators so that they can empower their students. And frankly, a lot of educators, when they learned anatomy, it was out of books or in posters. It wasn't their own aliveness. It wasn't their embodied anatomy that was brought to life. They didn't have the experience of their anatomy. And so I find that to be a very rich experience for all parties. So when I teach classes or workshops or trainings, there's often as many quote unquote lay people as there are people in the fitness or wellness or clinical industry. And it's new to everybody, this experience.
That's what I love the most about your trainings. I'm very hands on, and sometimes in the world of nutrition or even in personal training, right? There's a lot of textbooks and a lot of this is the protocol and this and this, but until you don't do it yourself and to others, you're like, this might not work for the regular person. So, since you work with a lot of active individuals, and especially the athletes or the gym goers or those high performers that are never really paying attention to stretching and breathing, what are your thoughts when they start ignoring their fascia? Like, what long term patterns do you see in a person that ignores taking care of their fascia?
We just have these workarounds. So, stiffness begets stiffness. And that's a real big problem. I was talking to the head of physical education at my kid's school this morning, and he had a torn hamstring, and he said it took 18 months for that hamstring to heal, and he has a problem now in the other leg, right? Because yeah, you got to walk forward, and so he just spends more time in the opposite foot, knee, thigh, hip than the injured side. The injured side needs some help too, but we are just masters of bypassing and workarounds. And those workarounds they're wonderful, they're adaptive, but we could probably have more balanced workarounds. And I think the therapy balls are a great intervention to highlight what tissues you're bypassing and then help bring them into the party so that you're not an out of tune orchestra. You are really playing a beautiful symphony as best as you can because you're regularly tuning up these different structures within your body. I mean, our company is Tune Up Fitness, and that is a big premise.
Jill, for somebody that is listening today, I love closing these conversations, which I am so honored to have you here. But I love closing with a simple practical tool that they will listen to this conversation and then for the whole week, they're actually practicing something. So is there one simple fascial or breath-based practice that they can try now that they can do it for the whole week and see they can just I love the way you teach us in trainings of testing, right? Do the baseline and test and see how that feels. So, yeah, is there anything that they can practice right now?
Yeah, I would love to highlight an interoception exercise for everybody because I just find it to be such a great concentration exercise. It's also great for building breath capacity and for developing interoception, which is your ability to physiologically listen to yourself. And so this exercise is called the witness breath. And it is, excuse me, not the witness breath. It's called the internal metronome breath. And it's in body by breath. And I think you did it in the training. And so in the internal metronome breath, you can be in any position that you want. But the first phase of this is to locate your heartbeat. When I teach it in the classroom, what I like to have people do is create this OK symbol. So you put your index and thumb finger together. You just let them rest together. You close your eyes. And then you try to pick up on the heartbeat that is felt between your two relaxed fingers. Now, for some people, that is very vague and they don't actually have a high interoception of the expansion and shrinking of these microvessels here. And so I say, well, you can bring your hand onto your throat, right, to the side of the neck. You can feel the heartbeat there, or you could put it on your actual heart, or you could put it on your wrist. So wherever you can find a pulse. I know you're in there. I know your heart's beating, so look for a pulse. So we find the pulse, and then we're going to create a breath pattern using the heartbeat as the metronome. And it's very, very simple. You're going to inhale for a count of 6 heartbeats, hold for 4 heartbeats, exhale for 8 heartbeats, hold for 4. So it's in 6, hold 4, out 8, hold 4. It's just a quiet breath using your heartbeat as the measure. So that would be the little clip and takeaway for folks to work on. And I think you'll find that if you can do this 3 to 5 minutes, you'll have a wonderful physiological cascade of relaxation, and you're going to be a little bit more in tune with some of the subtle sensing within your body.
I love that exercise. Actually, I did a lot of your exercises when I was working in corporate wellness because your trainings as an instructor, as a practitioner, I can go to a training of yours and I can apply the information right away. So to me, that is worth $1,000,000. For those who are listening, especially if they're instructors or people that want to further their education or simply just follow you, where do they find you? What do you offer once again? And if you can give us all your information, I'll put everything on the podcast notes. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about how can they reach you.
My website's tuneupfitness.com, and all of my coursework, happily, is online. We also teach them in person. But the online experience is wonderful because you have so much self-paced time for yourself and time to process, not in the presence of other people all the time. And I find that to be a real wonderful surprise. I didn't realize how the work would translate into online, but it has. It's doing really, really well. And then we have Zooms where we go over practicum that's related to the pre-recorded material. So there are many courses that are recorded, but our 3 primary certificate courses, our competency courses, are the role model method, and that's about 16 hours of content. There's the body by breath immersion, and that's about 18 hours of content. And then there's the yoga tune-up teacher training, and that is about 70 hours. It's a very, very intense 7-day program. That is my movement programming model, whereas role model is all about the science of fascia. Body by breath is really this science of the autonomic nervous system and its relationship of breath, fascia, vagus nerve. And then yoga tune-up teacher training is where you really refine a lot of classroom stuff, as well as engage in the biomechanical model of movement that I teach. So those are the 3, but there's other programs. Like, for example, those of you that are like, I want to do something right now. There's Rolling Along the Anatomy Trains. That's a partnership that I did with my friend Tom Myers, the creator of Anatomy Trains, and that's living on my website. I've done many programs with my dear friend Katie Bowman of nutritious movement. She and I have a program called Walking Well that's super helpful for people to disassemble their walk patterns and then learn rollouts and step-by-step approach to walking. So that's Walking Well. And then she and I have also done some mini things. We did a workshop this year on diastasis recti. We also have done a workshop called the Breast and Chest Masterclass. These are all living online. Roll into HIT is a program I created with my friend Doc Jen Fabroni. She's a physical therapist, and we bring in high intensity training and mush it up with self-myofascial release and some cool lectures. So that's really important. And then the program that you took it live, but it's the sort of the initiation of that is a program called Treat While You Train that I did with my dear friend Kelly Starrett, who is the founder of the Ready State. He wrote the book Becoming a Supple Leopard. So lots of different clinicians or movement experts that I've done shared work with, and then as well as my own individual program with Tune Up Fitness. So you can find all that stuff on my website and enter it at any place that is interesting to you. None of this is a hierarchy of programming. This is all a pie. All these programs speak to each other in different ways, and I'm so proud of all of them for so many different reasons. And then I'm on Instagram at the Jill Miller, and our company is at Tune Up Fitness. So you'll find us there, and then you'll find teachers. We have teachers all over the planet that teach this work. So people who've gone through the competency courses, they're listed on our website. You can just put in your zip code. You're like, I don't want to learn online, Jill. Oh, and then I forget, I actually have a weekly class called Move, Breathe, Roll. So I actually do new classes every week. And those who are subscribed to the Move, Breathe, Roll program, we also do mentor gatherings. And so that's for people at any level of health or fitness who are doing this work for themselves and are interested in learning more. And so people bring me really interesting questions, sometimes really complex, sometimes really fun and simple. And we gather once a cycle, which happens about once every 6 weeks. And I answer tons of questions. I make up new programs on the fly with them. And it's like having me as your private teacher, but in community.
Yeah, and also on YouTube, there's little videos. So if you never experienced...
Oh, right. There's YouTube and there's our website. Yeah, lots of free stuff.
Yeah.
There you go. There's the free stuff is important on Instagram, on YouTube, and on my website. So you're more than welcome. And of course, we do a lot of free content, and you can try out the Move, Breathe, Roll for 7 days for free also before committing.
Yeah, so people can experience really what this world of fascia is. Jill, I am so excited and thankful that you took a little bit of your time to dedicate into this conversation. I'm really, really honored. So I truly appreciate you in being here. And I hope that anybody that is listening, either you're a practitioner, an instructor, please train with Jill. She's incredible. Her work translates into the room that you're teaching, and people really appreciate it. People have seen the difference while I start teaching your methods and your theory. So I am super grateful that you were in my life. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it is such an honor. And really any teacher, all we want is that people get what it is we're trying to teach. And so I am so moved by your experience with this work, and that you have become a transistor radio. Like, you're able to translate it for your communities and the people that you work with, either in the gym or corporate. And so I'm so impressed, and I just thank you.
If you enjoy what you hear, subscribe and share it with someone who might need it. The more people join us, the closer we get to building a wellness community for everyone. Thank you for being here. Now let's navigate this bululu together. This podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any condition or disease. If you need help, please seek professional care.